the Go to University style FDCPA explanation. If you don't know what the FDCPA, it stands for the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. You came across this video because you are either being sued by a debt collector or a debt buyer. You have collections on your credit report that you're trying to get rid of, or a debt collector or a debt buyer just recently called you and you are looking for answers. This is the law that they have to abide by when it comes to debt collection practices. So we are going to deep dive into this because wherever you're at, whatever statement I said that applies to you, you need to understand the FDCPA, because that is going to be one and one of the most powerful out of the two defenses that you have is the FDCPA. Okay, so we're going to explain it. What is the FDCPA? The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is debt collection rules. It governs how debt collectors communicate and collect consumer debts. Consumer protection. It protects people from abusive, unfair, or deceptive collection conduct. And it applies to personal debts. It applies to debts made for personal, family, or household purposes. So if it is about a business debt, this is not really going to be specific to that. This is for your credit cards, your loans that you get. Okay. Why the FDCPA matters? It protects your peace. Collectors cannot use harassment, abuse, or pressure tactics to collect debts from you. It creates rules. Debt collectors must follow communication, disclosure, and validation rules. Okay, and it builds remedies. When rights are violated, consumers can build records and escalate, right? That's very, very important, because that's what we do over here at the Golden University. We're very strategic when it comes to how we handle collections on our consumer report, right? And again, the FDCPA doesn't govern your collection report, your credit report, but it does govern the debt collectors and how they're able to collect debts from you and how they're able to communicate with you. All right. Now, if you are trying to dispute a collection on your credit report, the FCRA is going to be the stronger one for disputing on your credit report, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Remember, I said one out of the two. The Fair Credit Reporting Act is the first one when it comes to disputes, triggering violations, and then being successful with getting paid for violations on your credit report. Who the FDCPA covers: debt collector, a company collecting a debt owed to someone else. So some debt collectors will contact you and say, "Hey, we're collecting on behalf of Capital One." A debt buyer, a company that bought a defaulted debt, which is 9 times out of 10 what you're dealing with, right? And then creditor using another name. So a lot of people think that the FDCPA doesn't apply to original creditors. And if an original creditor is trying to collect the debt on behalf of using its real name, like it's in charge off status, normally the FDCPA does not apply to them. Now you can, like I always say, you can check your state laws, because states, even though this is on a federal level, there are some states that, you'll have better protection when it comes to, creditors or financial institutes in that specific state. So always cross your T's and dot your I's. What counts as a consumer debt? Okay, so you're saying, oh, for personal use, but what does that look like? What can I use the FDCPA as a weapon for? Like, what does it cover? Credit card debt, medical debt, auto debt, personal loans, housing related debt. All right, pretty simple. This slide is very self-explanatory, y'all. This is what the kinds of debts that the FDCPA covers. Okay. What debt collectors cannot do. So this is getting down to the nitty gritty of, if you haven't read the FDCPA on Law Cornell, is a big trusted one. If you haven't read the FDCPA in full, this is pretty much what it says in a nutshell. Harass or abuse. Repeated calls to annoy, threats, or abusive language is not allowed. Mislead you. False threats, fake authority, or wrong debt amounts, which is that wrong debt amounts is more than people is often. Use unfair pressure. Collect amounts not allowed by contract or law, right? Unfair pressure. So they're trying to pressure you into paying something that they haven't even validated yet. All right? Expose your debt. Improperly discuss your debt with other people. Ignore limits. Contact you at times or places they know are inconvenient. How do they know they're inconvenient? Because you told them that it was inconvenient. Overshadow rights. Pressure you in a way that confuses your validation rights. Okay? Here, let's get into your validation rights. Validation information. The collector must identify the debt and key details. 5-day timing. Usually sent in the first message or within 5 days. So they have to contact with you in 5 days of purchasing that debt, right? To let you know that they have it and pretty much the details of that debt. 30-day window. You can dispute and request original creditor information. Now, you can dispute at any time anything on your credit report, right? Which is why we have the FCRA. Because pretty much what this is saying is the FDCPA, you have 30 days before it gets on your credit, before it gets to your credit report. So if you want to stop collections before it gets to your credit report, you're always going to start that dispute process within that 30 days. So when you get that initial letter in the mail, right, do not ignore it. You have that 30-day clock has started. Do not ignore it. Pause or disputed debt. A timely written dispute can stop collection until verification is mailed. So you have that right. They have to cease collection activity until they have verified this information, validated it through mail. Common red flags and violations, right? And this is complementing what they cannot do, but that threatening arrest or jail, calling over and over to annoy you, pretending to be a court or government, telling others about your debt, collecting fees not allowed. So again, when we talk about what to ask from a debt buyer, we went over that on that video. We would go over what to ask from a debt buyer, right? And we ask for that payment history. This is why, because you don't want them adding things in there that the initial agreement, right, does not allow. And a lot of people think too, oh, I didn't do business with you. Listen, we're not going to make it more complicated than it already is, because 9 times out of 10, very often, the agreement that you signed with the original creditor, somewhere in there, it does transfer. There's some type of clause in there that states that they can sell this to a third-party debt collector. It says something about third-party debt collectors, okay? And normally when a debt buyer purchases a debt from an original creditor, and that agreement, whatever was in that agreement, transfers over to them, right? So, but they don't always have that payment history. They're never going to have the payment history. They're never going to have from zero to beginning everything. And if for whatever reason they do, how do you know that to be true? Because again, the burden of proof is still on you. And outside of that, there's always other violations that happen. A debt buyer is never just going to violate one violation. It's always multiple, right? And in our dispute strategy, we always expose more. Even if it's not on the face of the credit report, we always expose with our methods other violations, okay? And ignoring a timely written dispute. So if you dispute with the credit bureaus because that's the only way that they are obligated and have a certain deadline, when you dispute directly with the credit bureaus and they send your initial dispute over to a debt buyer, ignoring a timely written dispute, you're in violation. You're in violation. Right? So even though that you're going to use the FCRA laws for when you do that initial credit bureau dispute letter, so that you can trigger the FCRA, so that they are obligated to do an investigation, right? It's still like that. That's where you kind of like expose it, and it's still like that double-edged sword of, yeah, you also have FDCPA violations as well. So that initial dispute to the credit bureau is exposed, and then it opens the can of worms for them to commit FDCPA violations as well, if that makes sense. What to do if you notice a problem? And this is pretty much the same for anything, right? You're going to get your documents, save calls and letters, identify the issue, dispute it in writing, track dates and proof, and then escalate if needed. That has always been this is going to be the thing that you do throughout all of your dispute processes, whether it's a collection, you dispute a repo, whether you dispute an eviction, whatever the case may be. And you realize dispute is always in that number 4 category, because again, you have to get prepared before you even send out that initial dispute, because we send out our disputes strategically and we go strong off the bat. What the FDCPA does not mean, right? Again, this is the same thing throughout all of these videos. No magic deletion, no automatic payout, no skipped proof, no vague disputes. What it does do though is helps you build a stronger record. Okay? When we're talking about all of these, what it doesn't mean, right? These are all for you to get prepared and complete on your own. That deletion, yeah, it's going to be around round 3 or 4. It's never going to be the first round. No automatic payout. You're going to have to get all of your ducks in a row. You're going to have to get all of your paperwork and trigger the certain laws that require them to do certain things, expose those violations, and you may have to take it to court, right? No skipped proof. You need all of your proof. Okay, it's no he say she say. No vague disputes. When you're disputing, you need to give them what is legally obligated and do not help them with anything else. Okay? Because that's the meat and potatoes of it. Sometimes, listen, it's a lot of you that can watch this video and skate off. Okay? Get your first collection deletion win. But there's also a lot of you who you want pretty much me in your back pocket to kind of walk you through even more in depth, right? And to be there when there are things that, this couple minute video or an ebook can't always predict. So if that is you and you have maybe a more advanced situation or whatever the case may be, or you are a beginner, because the Go to University is very, very beginner friendly all the way up to advanced, you need to be inside of the school community. All right, I'm not going to pressure you about it. It's in-depth classes, case law breakdown, all of those great things inside of there. So many classes dropping this month, and I want you to get in at this price, so that by the time you get inside, when these classes drop, you are beyond prepared. So with that being said, also if you have any questions, I do respond to questions. You can leave them in the description box below. I keep saying description box, but in the comment section, y'all know what I mean now. In the comment section below, I do respond to them. And again, if you need me in your back pocket, and also if you're being sued by a debt collector right now or a debt buyer, I want you to go and get the no surrender playbook, right? Because that is going to give you everything that you need to know, how you can challenge their exhibits, their evidence that they brought forth, how to respond, right? Anything from beginning to end on all of these how to know, like how to split up the two. So I split it into two, right? If you're being sued by a debt collector, or if you're being sued by a creditor, what to look for in their in the documents that they send, the summons, and make sure also, again, your affirmative defenses and how to answer properly, right? And how to pretty much attack their evidence. So all of that is inside of there. If you want one-on-one help and you want me to do it for you, and you want me to draft up all of the complaints, pretty much show you specifically in your case what's wrong and what the red flags are, and how, and a strategized plan, I also have that in the description box below. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next class.